Londoner, born in London, and moved away with my parents, and then have lived back in London since '98. I'm married and have got 2 boys, age 12 and nearly 9. And I'm a part-time deputy head in an inner city primary school.
Okay. And how long have you been coming to St Thomas's?
Since, I think, for about 7 or 8 years. When Sammy was about 1, we moved into the area then.
So just going back a bit, in terms of your upbringing, did you grow up in a Christian family or?
No, not at all. I only ever went to church with the Brownies on Remembrance Sunday, and to be honest, I don't have very positive memories of those services. It was always very close to my birthday, so I was quite distracted, I think, on those services. And my parents didn't ever take us to church at all, so no.
And do you remember sort of childhood or teenage years, did you think much about God, religion? Did it enter it?
I remember very clearly when I was about 14, one of the girls from my tap dancing class died quite suddenly. And I remember lying in bed and praying for her parents, and I didn't really know who I was praying to. I almost had a kind of picture of a man with a beard, you know, kind of a bit of a Father Christmas type figure, but I do distinctly remember realising how awful the situation must be and just praying that God, somebody would help her family. So I remember that. And I also remember, as I got a bit older, a sense of thinking, this cannot be what life is all about. I'm getting up, going to school, doing my homework, going to bed again and again and again. There must be more, but I didn't really know what that was.
Okay.
But...
And did you do anything about that?
No, not really. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It was only when I was 17 that my then boyfriend at school, so we were doing our A-levels, and he came from a Christian family, and he invited me to a barbecue and a barn dance. Right. Well, I think his mother actually persuaded him to invite me. Right. And that was a beginning then of a kind of 6-month journey of me being invited to different events.
These church events?
Yeah, church events, social element. There was a youth event that I went to, so I gradually got to know some Christians. Yeah.
So were you aware, like the first invite to the barn dance, were you aware it was a church thing, and did that matter, or you didn't?
I didn't know. They just... Well, I certainly didn't know what to expect. I loved dancing, and so I was up for that, and there were hay bales, and I remember it all being very normal until the vicar stood up and gave a little speech, and I remember him saying, the people around us, you know, Jesus could come back any day. And I can remember looking at the people sitting on these hay bales thinking, they look so normal, but surely they can't believe that, you know, really being quite flabbergasted by what I heard.
So you weren't expecting a talk in the...
No,
you hadn't been told.
No, certainly not that. I don't think I really knew what to expect, but I was happy to go along. I liked his family, I liked his friends, so...
Okay. So you flabbergasted, but you continued to go back to other things they invited you to?
Yeah, I did. He used to be in charge of the sound desk, so he used to sit at the back of church, and I used to go in the evening to the service, and I was allowed to sit next to him at the sound desk. So I think it gave me an opportunity to feel like I was kind of observing rather than actually feeling like I was actively being, you know, made to participate in the service, I suppose.
Do you remember how you felt when you first started going to church? Did that seem a bit odd, or okay?
The hardest thing was that my parents really didn't want me to go, particularly my dad. So it was always a difficult thing to actually be allowed to go. So I could never go in the morning, and he always used to say I had too much homework to do, but then I could say I've done all my homework, and as obviously I got older, I was 18, then it was harder for him to actively stop me. But yeah, that was quite difficult.
Yeah. So as you were going to church, started going to church, kind of what was happening then? Did you start to listen to things, or what
and ask lots of questions. And I can remember talking to my boyfriend and saying, you know, how can you believe all of this and then say that, you know, you love me if I don't believe all of it? And being very confused, and really then wrestling, I would say, for 6 months, hearing bits more, thinking it through. And then it was actually, they had a concert at the church, and Martin Joseph, I don't know if you remember him, a singer back in the day. And he was had a very strong sense of social justice, which is what I'd been brought up. My parents were very tolerant and very socially minded, I suppose. And I heard him sing and speak about what he'd seen, the poverty he'd seen, and how he made sense of the world by his faith in God and by giving that to God and praying. And that really resonated with me. I think that made me take it, begin to see that actually the two ideologies could come together, and the beliefs I had from my parents, I didn't have to put them to one side, I guess. And then it was, I think there was a guest service, a specifically evangelistic event that I remember going to, and they explained the gospel very clearly, and then they had a little side chapel. I remember them saying, and if after this service you would like to pray with somebody and make this prayer of dedication, go and do it. And I got up and went to the chapel. And I remember the lady, Liberty, she was my boyfriend's mother's friend, so she knew me, and she'd probably been praying with his mother for years. Well, the year or 6 months, however long it had been. And so I prayed the prayer.
Right. So how long was that from when you first started going to church?
About 6 months.
About 6 months.
Yeah.
And that particular service, had you gone to church that day knowing what kind of service it was?
I think they had made it clear that it was a guest service, but by then I was in the habit of going. Okay. To be honest, I knew quite a few of the people. I felt quite comfortable by then.
So prior to that service, but when you were going to church, would you have said you believed in God, but you had questions, or what was going on in your thinking?
I was thinking, can this really be true? Is what I was thinking. It was like there were weighing scales, and I had my dad's view of the world on one side, and then I had all these new, surprising truths on the other side, and it was really a kind of mind battle to think that through really carefully. And now I can look back and see the people were praying, and how God was working in me week by week. And I guess it sort of fell into place, and I felt that I needed to take that step of faith to say, yes, this is what I believe. And I felt very much that then it would almost become clearer. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So that was quite a tussle, obviously, you've been going through over those months. And then on that service you went for. Do you remember how you felt?
I do remember feeling excited, a bit overwhelmed, and also a bit anxious because of the situation with my parents. And I remember other people in the church being quite excited on my behalf. And I used to there was another family in our village who were members of the church, and they used to give me a lift in every Sunday, and speaking to them and looking at them and trying to figure out, what does this look like then living as a Christian? How are they different from my family? So it's lots of watching and listening. And I remember being given my first Bible. I was doing my A-levels at the time as well, so there was a lot going on, I guess. But it was really then when I left home to go to university that I really I found a church, and I went to confirmation classes. I got baptised and confirmed on the same day, and then got put into a home group. And that's really when my kind of Christian walk really sort of began properly. I was then more independent, and I could follow that. I was the ultimate, the kind of alternative rebel, if you like. Most children who leave home and go to university go wild, and I was like, yay, I can go to church now without feeling worried.
So are you able to say a little bit about how that affected things at home for you?
It was difficult to begin with, definitely, and put a barrier between me and my parents, I would say. They were very concerned. My dad thought I was going to be brainwashed, and he gave me books on Eastern philosophy. He wanted me to read more widely. He really saw this as being detrimental and be closing my mind to, I'm not quite sure what, but I think he felt he was probably more enlightened and he wanted me to share that. So that was hard, but I went home every holiday. It wasn't like there was no contact. I just didn't really talk to them that much about it. But then I did tell them when I was getting baptised and confirmed, and my mother had been confirmed as a, christened as a child, and she, I remember she sent me a card and a silver jug that she'd had, and she had my name engraved, and that meant heaps to me because it felt as if they were, accepting the choice I'd made. Yeah. And then over the years, gradually, it got easier. And I think then when I met my now husband, who had had a similar path to faith as me, become a Christian as an adult, a young adult, about 18, very similar journey from a non-Christian family, that really helped because they felt he was kind of normal. They felt comfortable with him. So that really helped. I think they were relieved that, oh, good, she's not gone off to join some weird cult.
And for folk who are, I guess, in a similar position to what you were going through when they are starting to hear about the Christian faith, starting to explore it, but are aware of, if I commit myself to following Christ, then this will cause, or this could cause conflict and a tussle within family or close relationships. What sort of things would you say to somebody in that sort of situation?
To be patient, definitely. I can remember the first time my parents invited me to say grace on Christmas Day. I had gone back home for the holidays, and the snow was so bad I couldn't get to church, and my mum in particular was very aware that would be significant for me, and so she suggested that I might like to say grace, and that felt like a miracle that they all were happy for me to do that. And of course, having children, they've been to, our wedding, they came and heard the gospel at our wedding. They've met all our Christian friends, our children's baptisms. So bit by bit, there have been occasions for them to come into church. And even this Christmas, they came to a gospel Christmas concert in the city, which was fantastic, that they came to that. But it's taken years and years of prayer and patience and of being able to prove to them that we're not judging them, we're not considering ourselves better than them, but having to sometimes wrestle to try and be a good witness and figure out what that looks like in different situations. And that's where being married to a Christian who understands that has been an absolute blessing. So, and it's still one of the hardest things for me is knowing that they don't yet believe. And that's always something that I'm aware of and continue to pray for. But yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Would you say that, I mean, since that service when you committed your life to Christ, and with that kind of tussle that you've been going through, is it worth it?
Absolutely. I think the whole notion of understanding a heavenly Father compared to an earthly father is just massive. And absolutely, I can look back since that time when I was 18, so many different times where I've been far from God, where he's had to teach me, pruning has gone on, different periods of my life, to times where absolutely I could not know how I would have got through without God's love and mercy. And that's before you even think of heaven and the eternal promises we've got. So absolutely worth it for life walking with Christ now, and of course for eternity with him. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you.